You're going to look incredible in this one. Relax. Let go. Let yourself slip into something exquisite, something effortless, something unforgettable. And when you're ready, baby, dream of a new life.
My Best Friend's Girlfriend by Catherine Serafina. Chapter 4. The next couple of days passed uneventfully. Work kept me busy enough that I didn't have too much time to dwell on the madness Garrett had roped me into. Still, the whole thing lingered in the back of my mind, impossible to fully ignore. On Wednesday afternoon, I got a text from Garrett. Garrett, Avoskin's been ordered. Should arrive tomorrow. Hope you're okay with the choice. I stared at the message for a long moment, frowning. The choice. What did that even mean? Had he gone all out with the customization? Did I even want to know? I typed out a quick response. Me. Should I be worried? He didn't reply, which only made me more suspicious, but there wasn't much I could do about it, so I shrugged it off and focused on finishing my workday. The day crawled by. I tried to keep my mind occupied, but the waiting was starting to get to me. By the time Thursday rolled around, I was both dreading and anticipating Garrett's inevitable call. Whatever he had in store, it was almost here. The call from Garrett came late Thursday morning, and his voice was practically buzzing with excitement. "Hey, Peter," he said, jumping straight into it. "Just wanted to give you a heads up. The Evo skin and a few other things are being delivered to your house today." I frowned, leaning back in my chair. "Wait, why my house?" "Logistics," he said quickly. "It's simpler this way, trust me. Plus, I figured it'd be better for you to try everything on in your own space. Makes sense, right?" "Sure," I said slowly, though I still wasn't entirely sure what he meant by a few other things. "What else did you order?" "Nothing crazy," he said, a little too casually. "Just some accessories, clothes, stuff to complete the look." I sighed. Of course you did. "Oh, and one more thing," he added, his tone shifting slightly. "The name you'll have to go by is Ksenia." I froze, blinking in disbelief. "Ksenia?" "Yeah," he said. "That's the name I told my parents a while back." I groaned. "You're unbelievable. You mean Ksenia, like that sexy minx from that show we used to watch?" He chuckled awkwardly. Yeah, look, it's a good name, okay? Classy, memorable. My mom loved it when I mentioned it." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "You do realize how weird it's going to be having you call me that, knowing how much you loved that actress? I don't even want to know how many nights you stayed up late thinking about her in the dark, alone." "Can we not make this awkward before it even starts?" he said, clearly trying to keep the conversation light. "Too late," I muttered. "Fine, I'll see you whenever you get here." "Thanks, Peter. You're the best," he said, and hung up before I could say anything else. The rest of the day dragged. Knowing what was waiting for me at home made it impossible to focus. Even the drive home felt like an eternity, my mind racing with possibilities and questions about whatever Garrett had ordered along with the Evo skin. When I finally got to my front door, I was greeted by a mountain of boxes. There had to be at least 10, maybe more, all varying in size. One stood out immediately, a sleek, sturdy box that practically screamed high-tech. "That's gotta be the Evo skin," I muttered to myself, stepping over the smaller boxes to grab it. It took a few trips to get everything inside. Just as I was dragging in the last box, Garrett's car pulled into the driveway. "Hey," he called, jogging up to me. "Looks like everything got here." "No kidding," I said, gesturing to the pile now cluttering my living room. "What the hell is all this? I thought you said you ordered a few things." He grinned sheepishly. "Okay, maybe I went a little overboard, but hey, I wanted to make sure you had options." I rolled my eyes and handed him the last box. "You're lucky I like you, Garrett. Otherwise, you'd be on your own with this circus." He laughed, following me inside. "You're going to kill it, Ksenia," he said like he was testing the name out. "I promise." Hearing him use the name for the first time made me cringe a little. But I let it slide. We had work to do, and from the looks of things, it was going to be a long night. Inside my now chaotic house, with boxes piled up like some bizarre post-apocalyptic Amazon warehouse, I let out a heavy sigh and made my way to the kitchen. "Beer?" I called out over my shoulder. "Hell yes," Garrett replied, already sprawled out on the couch with a level of comfort that was frankly unsettling given the disarray he just inflicted upon my living room. I grabbed 2 cold beers from the fridge, popped the caps off, and handed one to him as I sat down beside him. "Okay," I said, gesturing to the towering mountain of boxes. "Where do we even begin with this mess? Shouldn't we start with the Evo skin?" Garrett shook his head, grinning like the cat that got the cream. "No way, dude. Save the best for last, right? Let's crack open the smaller stuff first." I frowned, eyeing the haphazard piles of boxes with a mix of trepidation and annoyance. "You mean the random junk you insisted on ordering? Fantastic." Garrett snorted and lobbed one of the smaller boxes my way, forcing me to juggle it with my beer in a frantic attempt not to drop either. "Hey, watch it," I snapped, fumbling to keep everything upright. "Relax," he said, sprawling back on the couch with that infuriating grin. "Think of it as your maiden voyage as Ksenia. Enjoy unwrapping your birthday presents." I shot him a glare, setting my beer aside as I carefully peeled back the tape. "Don't get any ideas. Ksenia's a one-time deal. After the gala, she's officially retiring." Garrett smirked, the corners of his mouth twitching. "Sure she is. Who knows? You might love being a sexy woman so much. You'll want a whole collection of birthdays as Ksenia?" I gave him a flat stare. "Not happening." All right, he said, holding up his hands, though his grin only widened. "But it's still a little funny." "To you?" I retorted. "Now shut up and let me see what's in here." I flipped the box open and froze. Whatever comeback I'd been preparing evaporated instantly as my jaw slackened. For a moment, I just stood there, staring into the box, stunned into silence. Garrett's grin wavered as he noticed my expression. "What?" he asked, leaning forward. "What's in there? Is everything okay?" Instead of answering, I tipped the box over and let its contents spill onto his lap. A cascade of lace and satin tumbled out with a soft, almost indecent whisper, draping across his legs like some kind of scandalous treasure hoard. Dozens of panties, every color, cut, and fabric imaginable, piled onto Garrett's lap. Lace thongs, silk bikinis, sheer teddies, and because apparently there was no line he wouldn't cross, several pieces that looked like they were missing about 90% of the fabric they were supposed to have. The sheer variety was almost impressive if it weren't so utterly ridiculous. I crossed my arms, surveying the scene. "Not really," I said, my voice as flat as the box now was. Garrett gawked at the pile, his ears slowly turning red. Options?" he stammered, still staring at the lingerie as though it might spontaneously combust. "Options?" I repeated, incredulous. "For what exactly? You think I'm going to spend the night debating which sexy little thong best complements this imaginary Ksenia's imaginary outfit? Is that the plan?" I nudged one of the pieces with my foot, frowning. Seriously, what even is the point of this stuff? It's not like it actually accentuates anything. It's just tiny for the sake of being tiny. How is that supposed to be sexy? His face flushed crimson as he hastily swiped the panties off his lap, scattering them across the floor like they were radioactive. Okay, maybe I went a little overboard," he admitted, his voice pitching higher with every word. I raised an eyebrow. "A little. Garrett, you sent me a pile of fabric scraps and called it a wardrobe. Do you even hear yourself?" He rubbed the back of his neck, his sheepish grin doing nothing to improve the situation. "I just wanted to make sure everything worked, with the outfit." I groaned, dragging a hand down my face. "This," I said, gesturing to the pile of scandalous fabric now decorating my floor, "is officially the dumbest thing I've ever done for you." Garrett had the audacity to chuckle. "But you're still gonna do it, right?" I grabbed my beer, took a long swig, and sighed. "Let's just open the next box," I muttered, reaching for another package. "Sounds good," he said, clearly regaining his confidence. "Maybe this one's got shoes." I shot him a withering look. "Not funny, Garrett. Not funny at all." As we kept unpacking the boxes, it felt like each one held some fresh, borderline ridiculous surprise. I tore into one particularly large carton and found 6 slim, neatly stacked boxes inside, arranged with almost military precision. Curiosity got the better of me. I carefully slid out the first box and lifted the lid. The sight inside made me pause. Lying there was an emerald green evening gown, the kind of dress that didn't just catch the light, it owned it. The fabric shimmered and shifted as I turned the box, looking more like liquid elegance than anything designed for actual humans to wear. It was stunning, exuding a timeless sophistication that could stop conversations dead. "Okay," I said, "I'll be tying it up for Garrett's inspection. This is... wow." His grin stretched ear to ear, his face glowing with the smug satisfaction of someone who knew they'd nailed it. "Wait until you see the rest," he said, practically bouncing with anticipation. True to his word, the next box held a sleek black dress with a slit so daring I wondered if it came with a warning label. Then came a fiery red gown that practically vibrated with intensity, followed by a soft purple strapless number that felt both delicate and bold at the same time. A midnight blue piece practically radiated quiet sophistication, and the last dress, a gold creation, seemed to pour from my hands like molten starlight. By the time I'd unearthed them all, my living room looked like a high-end fashion showroom. I turned to Garrett, still clutching the emerald dress. "You bought 6 dresses?" My voice was equal parts incredulous and exasperated. "Garrett, this is excessive. Did you seriously think we'd need this many options?" He shrugged, utterly unbothered. "Of course. We've got to find the perfect one, don't we?" I set the gown down and reached for the next box, muttering something about insanity. Inside, nestled among folds of velvet and satin, was an explosion of jewelry. Necklaces, bracelets, rings, and earrings glittered in the light, each piece more extravagant than the last. It felt less like accessorizing and more like raiding a treasure hoard. I pulled out a pair of diamond-studded earrings, holding them up to the light. The gems sparkled brilliantly, but all I could do was frown. "Garrett, you do realize my ears aren't pierced, right? These are pointless." He waved a hand dismissively. "The Evo skin will take care of that." "Of course it will," I muttered, tossing the earrings back into the box. "Why wouldn't it? It's not like this whole charade is absurd or anything." The mounting ridiculousness of it all settled heavier on my shoulders with each new discovery. The earrings, the dresses, they weren't just props. They were pieces of a life I didn't want to step into even for a night. But I bit back my protests, the nagging voice of friendship and obligation keeping me tethered. When we got to the next stack of boxes, I thought I'd seen everything. I was wrong. Inside were shoes, heels in every height and style imaginable, from sleek and understated to avant-garde creations that looked more like sculptures than footwear. I picked up a pair of stilettos that gleamed like polished chrome. "Okay, I get the heels," I said, holding them up for inspection. "I'll need them to complete the look." I trailed off, eyeing the precarious height of the heels. Just the thought of walking in these made my stomach churn. But what the hell is all this? I gestured at the growing pile of flats, sneakers, sandals, and even boots now cluttering the floor. Garrett looked up from his own box, frowning. "What do you mean?" I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "This," I said, sweeping my hand at the chaos around us. "This is overkill, Garrett. It's not like Ksenia needs a different shoe for every occasion. She's not going on a world tour, she's going to a gala. One night. That's it." He gave me that maddening grin, the one that meant he was about to say something I didn't want to hear. "She's not a fake girlfriend," he said, his tone almost sing-song. "She's going to be a very real, very stunning woman. And stunning women, they need options." "She doesn't exist," I shot back, my voice flat. "Not yet." His grin widened, and he gave me an exaggerated wink. "Exactly." I groaned, setting aside another box and grabbing the next with a mix of dread and resignation. I flipped it open and was greeted by a sprawling, intimidating makeup kit. Powders, palettes, brushes, tools whose purposes I couldn't even begin to guess. "Well," I said, holding up a contour palette and flipping it over like I might find an instruction manual on the back. "I guess this makes sense. I can't exactly show up looking like a disaster." "You won't," Garrett said confidently. "You're going to look amazing, stunning even." "Sure," I replied, staring at the overwhelming array of products. "One small issue. I don't have a clue how to use any of this." "Don't worry about it," he said, brushing off my concern with a wave. "We're hiring professionals. Makeup artist, hairstylist, the works. You won't have to lift a finger." That was admittedly a relief. At least I wouldn't have to fumble my way through liquid eyeliner. But the more boxes we opened, the more surreal it all became. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being dragged into a world I didn't belong in, a world I didn't want to belong in. With every gown, every shoe, every brush and bottle, the weight of what I was being asked to do pressed heavier on my chest. Still, for Garrett, I supposed I could endure it, even if it meant pretending to be someone I wasn't for one night. The unboxing frenzy had taken a sharp turn into the bizarre. I reached into another box, and my hand froze mid-motion. My eyes widened as I stared at the contents. "Garrett," I said slowly, still processing the scandalous reality staring back at me. "What the actual hell?" Inside was a collection of swimsuits, or rather bikinis, but not the kind you'd wear for a relaxing day at the beach. These were sinfully tiny, the kind of swimsuits designed less for swimming and more for, well, other activities. I held up one of the skimpier pieces, a black triangle top paired with a bottom that could only charitably be described as minimal. My eyebrow twitched as I turned to Garrett, who was suddenly very interested in fiddling with his watch. "Why?" I began, waving the bikini at him like a weapon. "Would I need this? It's a gala, not a pool party, or a bikini contest." Garrett rubbed the back of his neck, looking sheepish for once. I got carried away." "Got carried away?" I echoed, my voice rising in disbelief. "This isn't carried away. This is an entire freight train of bad decisions." He tried to grin, but it came out more apologetic than roguish. "Look, if we don't use them, I can return them. No harm done, right?" I snorted, tossing the bikini back into the box. "It's pretty obvious you were thinking with the wrong head." "Okay, ouch," Garrett muttered, crossing his arms but wisely deciding not to argue the point. But the insanity didn't stop there. Another box revealed an avalanche of pants and shorts in every style and fabric imaginable. Skinny jeans, boyfriend cuts, wide-leg trousers, linen capris, and even high-waisted shorts. I grabbed a pair of leather pants from the pile, holding them up like I'd discovered an alien artifact. "Are these for the gala too, or are you planning for Ksenia's hypothetical world tour?" Garrett gave me a weak shrug, barely containing a smirk. "Options," he said. "Options," I repeated, shaking my head as I dropped the pants onto the growing pile of unnecessary wardrobe additions. Then came the skirts. Mini, midi, maxi, you name it, it was in there. Some flowed like summer breezes, while others looked ready to scandalize an entire room. Garrett leaned over as I held up a miniskirt that could have doubled as a headband. "I figured that would show off your legs," he offered. "What legs?" I shot back, glaring at him. "You want to see my hairy legs in it now?" He shrugged again, all innocence, and reached for another box. This time it was blouses. Chiffon, silk, tailored, embroidered, each one more elaborate than the last. My hand hovered over a sheer, lace-detailed blouse, and I wondered if Garrett had accidentally cleaned out an entire department store. "This is getting ridiculous," I muttered, setting the blouse aside before Garrett could make another comment. But the pièce de résistance came in the next box. Sleepwear, silky nightgowns in jewel tones, coordinated pajama sets complete with robes and slippers, and even a few sheer lacy numbers that left little to the imagination. I held up one particularly risque piece, a black satin slip that felt more like lingerie than loungewear, and turned to Garrett, utterly baffled. "Planning for the after party?" I deadpanned. Garrett winced, rubbing the back of his neck again. "Okay, maybe I overdid it." "You think?" I said, gesturing to the mountain of clothing threatening to overtake the room. "Garrett, this isn't overboard. This is a full-blown invasion of lingerie and loungewear." He chuckled nervously, kicking a pair of panties under the couch with his shoe. "Hey, At least Ksenia will be ready for literally anything. I groaned, leaning against the table and pinching the bridge of my nose. This is the dumbest thing I've ever done for you, I muttered, shaking my head at the sheer audacity of it all. Garrett, ever the optimist, beamed at me. But you're still doing it? I sighed, letting my hand drop to my side. Yeah, I said, grabbing another box. Let's just get this over with before my brain gives up entirely. He grinned, reaching for the next box. Maybe this one has something practical in it. I shot him a look that could curdle milk. Don't push your luck. As I reached for the final box before the grand unveiling of the Evo skin itself, I hesitated. Garrett handed it to me with a grin that teetered between mischievous and apologetic, and I braced myself for yet another round of sartorial absurdity. I set it down on the table, taking a breath before peeling back the tape. The lid lifted smoothly, revealing what could only be described as a riot of lace and satin. My stomach dropped. Of course, I muttered, staring at the contents. Why wouldn't it be bras? Nestled inside was an overwhelming assortment of bras in every imaginable style, color, and fabric. Crimson, cerise, violet, blush, black, lacy, satiny, embroidered, and everything in between. Push-up bras jostled for space alongside lacy bralettes, strappy backless contraptions, and even sports bras, as if I'd be jogging in this ridiculous Ksenia getup. I picked up a particularly flashy red number, its lacy cups adorned with ribbons that dangled like overachieving Christmas decorations. I held it up between two fingers, dangling it as if it might bite. Why am I not surprised? I asked flatly, shooting Garrett a withering look. He had the decency to look sheepish, rubbing the back of his neck. Hey, you're going to need them, he offered weakly, like this justified the lingerie Armageddon. For one night, Garrett, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. One single night. Why on earth would I need this many bras? Is there some kind of emergency bra rotation you're not telling me about? Garrett opened his mouth, likely to deliver another ridiculous defense, but I held up a hand to stop him. My eyes narrowed as I scanned the tags on the bras, my brain piecing something together that I wasn't prepared for. Then it hit me. Wait a damn second, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous tone. These are all tagged as 32D? Garrett coughed awkwardly, shifting his weight like a kid caught sneaking cookies. Yeah, so? I stared at him, slack-jawed. You're telling me I'm gonna have D-cup breasts? The volume of my voice rose with each word until it practically echoed in the room. Garrett, are you fucking kidding me right now? He cringed, his hands going up in a defensive gesture. Look, I had to, he said, his tone bordering on pleading. I told my parents you had, a generous figure. Generous? I repeated, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. I held up the red bra, glaring at it like it had personally offended me. Garrett, these things are huge. I'm going to be walking around with them strapped to my chest all night like a human wrecking ball. Garrett winced but attempted a nervous chuckle. It's not that bad, he said weakly. And hey, Ksenia's supposed to be stunning, right? Big boobs just complete the look. My dad's eyes lit up when he heard that you were stacked. Clearly proud of me. I stared at him, my expression unreadable, until he started to squirm under my gaze. His grin faltered, but I could see the nervous energy bubbling under the surface. He knew he'd crossed a line, and now he was scrambling to recover. I groaned, the sound low and guttural as I dropped the bra back into the box like it was radioactive. This is spiraling out of control, I muttered, dragging a hand down my face. My brain scrambled to reconcile the idea of suddenly sporting D-cup breasts. My current, decidedly flat chest seemed like a distant memory already. Garrett took a tentative step forward, his tone softening. Come on, he said, patting me on the shoulder with a surprising amount of gentleness. It's not that bad, you'll get used to it. Just one night, remember? I pulled my hands away from my face long enough to glare at him, my expression a mix of exasperation and reluctant affection. You're so lucky you're my best friend, I said through gritted teeth. His grin returned, this time with a cocky self-assurance that was both irritating and oddly endearing. I know, he said smugly, and for what it's worth, you're going to look amazing. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I grabbed my beer and tipped the bottle back, downing the rest in one long, desperate gulp. The burn of the alcohol was a fleeting distraction from the whirlwind of emotions pounding in my chest. This was too much, too fast. The lingerie, the clothes, the huge breasts, and we still hadn't even opened the Evo skin. I set the empty bottle down with a decisive thunk and took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "All right," I said, my voice tight with anticipation and dread. "Let's get this over with." Garrett nodded eagerly, turning to the sleek, polished box that seemed to pulse with an unsettling kind of life. It sat there on the table, the key to this insane plan, radiating the promise and threat of transformation.
All of that. And the worst part, we hadn't even gotten to the Evo skin yet.
Still lost in the dream, aren't you? Don't worry, I've got plenty more where that came from. Sweet, sexy, transformative little dreams. All just a click away. And if you're craving the naughty versions, the ones too hot for YouTube, you know exactly where to find them. On my Patreon. I'll be waiting, gorgeous.